Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome. It's Orange Bloods live on a Sunday, the day after Texas and Ohio State played a death match in Columbus that ended with one team having a little bit less life than the other. And now we go on. Do us a favor, like that video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Thank you to the 135,000 plus that have done so. Big weekend for Orange Bloods live on a weekend when a big game was played. Settle in. We're going to talk a little bit about what happened yesterday, what the big picture discussion from this week should look like. I think the big thing is, right, first and foremost, there's no reason to overreact. This game was always going to end with one of the two teams playing in it losing, using up one of its two mulligans, presumably. And then we would have a greater sense of kind of where everything stands at every position on the field. And that's kind of how I feel waking up on a Sunday morning. I'm in the middle of writing my 10 thoughts from the weekend right now. And by the way, I'll take your super chats if you have them. Feel free, jump in the chat, do all of those things. We'll be interactive today, but we just wanted to get a little Sunday content before we do the Monday overreaction show tomorrow with Anwar here on the channel. It was a perfectly suitable performance. Both teams, I thought, kind of played about the same level. I think in the end, I end up thinking about this game a little bit about what I thought about last year or last season when these teams met in January. Ohio State just made a few more plays, and they made a few less mistakes. And in a game that was decided by a single possession, a single score, late fourth quarter, those things matter. They mattered in January, and they mattered again today. And now when you pull the hood open and inspect, I think, the engine, I think for both teams, you've got some real question marks, and I think you've got a lot of things that you'll feel real good about. I think both of those defenses will emerge from this weekend feeling like, okay, hey, man, not going to lose a lot of games when you don't give up 2 touchdowns or more. And I thought both of those defenses could play better. I didn't think that Ohio State defense was better than the group from a year ago, except this Texas offense right now is not as good as the one that played in January. So those two things kind of met in the middle. And at the end of the day, not performing or not producing is not performing and not producing. And Texas kind of has to figure out a way to take that step. We'll get to that step here momentarily. I think both teams know they've got to get better at quarterback. One team's quarterback didn't make a big mistake. I thought Julian Sain actually not just outplayed Arch Manning by a little bit, not by a lot, because I thought he was probably plagued by receiver drops and a little bit of bad luck, maybe more than Arch was. Although neither team's offense did much. I thought both teams' running games, I thought both teams' offensive lines, The thing that was really strange is that for a game that was dominated by the defense, both sides of the ball, neither team's defenses really came up with big plays. And I think, we're going to harp on what the Texas offense did and didn't do today, tomorrow, the rest of the week. I think one of the real interesting things about inspecting this game is focusing on the two strengths. Both teams' defenses roughly did the same level of production. I went back and looked, right? We know Texas had 0 sacks, 1 tackle for loss as a team, no created turnovers. Ohio State only had 1 created turnover and 1 sack, and yet both sides dominated, right? Both sides controlled the other team's offenses, and yet when you look at the 2 turnovers that Ohio State was able to create, one directly led to the first touchdown of the game, and then the other one, actually led to the game-winning touchdown. That gave them their 14-0 lead after the Arch Manning interception. And then the sack in the second quarter came on a 3rd and 10 and killed a drive, which not the most nuclear of game-changing plays, but it's what you want those plays. You need those plays to exist. So I show up today and I say, you know what? I promise you in the Texas locker room, the defense is saying we could have done more. We needed to create some turnovers. We don't practice 30 minutes a day on stripping the ball and tip passes and all these things to come away with none in any game. Now, that's a really high bar. You know what bar that is? That's the Ohio State-Georgia bar for the Texas defense. we're not using the LSU 2019 offense to judge the 2025 Texas offense yet. I think let's just start with Arch, and I'll take a look at the chats, and I don't see anything in the super chats, guys. I try to do like a little bit of opening commentary. I promise. I'll jump around. Galen, I'm only putting this up because he agrees with me. I agree, Catch. In order for Texas to win it all, they need to play some clean football. OSU, they made the plays and kept it clean. Kind of as simple as that. You know, I just got finished watching Liverpool and Arsenal play. And you guys, I'm shocked that I don't have a Liverpool shirt on right now because I should be touting the champions and their rise to first place. But they just got finished playing Arsenal. Those two teams played for 90 minutes, and there really wasn't much separating the two teams. It came down to one guy made one play. And, if you're Arsenal, you didn't make the defining plays. So you can't say it was good enough. And I think the one thing that everybody in that locker room on both sides of the ball will say is, were there times we played well? Yes. Do we think that level of football will win us most games this season? Yeah, I think so. I think that gets lost in a loss. That wasn't a bad loss. That was a loss that if they give that performance, certainly on the defensive side of the ball, Texas will win 10 or 11 games in a regular season. I don't know if it gets it done against Georgia, but pretty much everywhere else, probably. But there weren't enough big plays. There weren't game-changing plays. They do matter. And if you don't get them on either side of the ball, you don't get to walk out the next day and say, what we did? We kicked a bunch of ass and played really well. No, it wasn't good enough. And the thing is, the bar now, and I'm writing about this in my 10 thoughts from the weekend. We know what Texas can do. Texas has become the 1994 San Francisco 49ers. They entered that season obsessed with beating Dallas. You'll have to forgive me. It's impossible for these eyes to look through the prism of any Texas performance without asking, can that beat Ohio State or Georgia? Is what's happening there, will that be good enough in January when the season is on the line? Because that's how this team is ultimately going to be defined. Don't question that either, because that's how the offensive line last year is defined. As good as they were for most of the season, they were terrible against Georgia in both games, got their ass handed to them against Ohio State, and in the end, we don't remember that was a Joe Moore best offensive line in the country nominated group. We remember that at the end of the season, they didn't make enough big plays, or they didn't make the plays that they needed to make. They didn't hold up in the biggest games. So a lot of the way that I look at this game is through the prism of, what about January? What about if these two teams play again in a rematch? That's how I choose to kind of look at this game. And a lot of what Texas did was really good. I think, the running game, pretty solid. Solid, not great. Texas averaged 4.6 yards per carry. None of the running back at 4.6 yards per carry among the running backs. The numbers were a little bit juiced by Arch contributing. And I'm not saying that doesn't count, but if we're going to talk about the ground game and what they were able to do against that Ohio State offensive line, you probably need to look at what it did with the players that it chose to really attack that Ohio State defensive line. And they were solid. I think that's promising, because if you're solid against Ohio State, I think we can look ahead and say that group will probably do pretty good against San Jose State next week. So the running game, solid, but it's not explosive. And that is it good enough to get it done against 9, 10, 11 teams on the schedule? Probably. What happens when they play Georgia later in the year? That's where my doubt sticks in. That question wasn't answered in a positive way yesterday. But in all, we're talking about one of the best teams in college football. So this conversation that we're having really does take some nuance. We have to be able to have a conversation where we say, you know what? The offensive line wasn't a disaster, and that's good. But it might not be great. We probably need to be able to say, hey, the Texas running backs, not bad yesterday. Pretty good, all things considered. I thought CJ Baxter and Trey Wisner ran hard. But we need to be able to say those guys were pretty good and then be able to say not a lot of explosiveness in the run game. At times, it looked like both of those players had pianos on their backs when they got to the second level. You can say that, and it doesn't mean they were bad. Consequently, you can say about the Texas defense, hey, man, when they play against Georgia later in the year and when they play against Ohio State maybe later in the year, they're going to need to create some turnovers. They're going to have to create some big plays. They were really, really good. The Texas defense was exceptional, but it wasn't good enough because they lost. And they didn't create many game-changing plays, if any. So there's a level that they can get to. There's a whole bunch of levels that Arch Manning can get to. Arch, I mean, Mama always said there were going to be days like this. And for those of you that watch Chad and I do the show, and I'm looking, I don't see any super chats, so I'm keeping a lookout. Again, I promise I'll go back and scan through this and make sure we hit up some of the chats. I said all last week I didn't expect there to be a lot of points in this game. My prediction was Texas 17, Ohio State 16. I thought the winner of this game would score 2 touchdowns and the loser would score 1. I got the teams backwards, but the texture of the game is exactly what I expected to happen. I told you guys weeks ago, coming out of the very first scrimmage, the under is the play. It turned out to be, I didn't get everything right, but I got that right. And one of the things I said about Arch Manning on Friday, Arch probably going to have a couple of bad games, guys. You can't cheat quarterback development. You can't cheat not having experience. Julian saying for Ohio State wasn't really that good yesterday, but he didn't make the big mistake. He got a W. He gets the win. But at the end of the day, it's a data point in his development, and same for Manning, who was miserable for the most part. Like those late yardage, he threw for 13 yards in the first quarter, 13 yards in the second quarter, 12 yards in the third quarter. Like bad. The offense had 0 points after the third quarter. But that might be the best defense he plays all season, or the second best, or one of the best. And it was on the road, and he had never done that before. And I said all week long, guys, I mean, if you think I'm lying, how many times did I mention Chris Sims against Kansas in the last couple of weeks? That Arch is probably going to have a game, and I think he still will. Arch will have a 2-interception game this season. That didn't happen yesterday, but it'll happen. It almost happened yesterday, but it will happen at some point this season. And the question is, when does it happen? Does it happen in Athens? Because Texas probably loses that game. Does it happen against UTEP? Texas won't lose that game. Does it happen against Arkansas? Texas probably doesn't lose that game. Does it happen in Gainesville? Ooh, not so sure. It's his first season as a starter. So if you went into the game yesterday and did not think it was within the realm of possibilities that Arch could play poorly, then that's on you. That's just not common sense. Now, look, I didn't think he'd be terrible for most of the game. I didn't think the offense would be completely impotent, and that if it was, we wouldn't be blaming the offensive line. That's not what happened. It wasn't the offensive line's fault that the offense was completely impotent for most of the game. Now, you file away the data points. It's a long season. They got 3 preseason games, aka scrimmages at DKR over the course of the month of September. This will be a different team than the one that goes to Gainesville in October. Other than they'll be really good on defense. There's a lot of stuff to work out. This Texas offense needs to build some confidence. Arch Manning needs to have some success. But let me tell you, when they go to Gainesville in October, it'll be his second career start on the road. Uncle Peyton, go back. It's hard to find. Let me read you a little excerpt from a game article that I read involving Uncle Peyton from 1994. Granted, he was a true freshman, But he's also one of the greatest quarterbacks that ever lived, right? Right? I mean, if I'm going to tell you that all of the great ones in their first season as starters had some tough moments, you got to be able to back that up. Well, the first time Peyton Manning at home played against a top 10 team as a starting quarterback at Tennessee, 10 of 18, 138 yards, intercepted twice, sacked 3 times. And when it was over with, guess what Peyton Manning said that day? Quote, "We played our hearts out. Our game plan was good. We just got beat," end quote. Sounds a lot like what Arch said yesterday when the game was over. They didn't make enough plays. Ultimately, in a really close game, the other team made a couple more plays. But it happened to Peyton. You know, Tom Brady, his first season as a starter, he had a 10-point loss to Syracuse. 13 of 24, 104 yards, touchdown and a pick, got benched in the game for Drew Henson. And he's only the GOAT. He's only the GOAT. How about my guy, Aaron Rodgers? And Aaron Rodgers, and this was after, 2 years of junior college or 1 year of junior college? I forget how they did that. He might have been the guy that only got one. I'm not sure. Forgive me. So in his first season as a starter at Cal, Aaron Rodgers, probably at his peak, the best quarterback these eyes have ever seen. I mean, he won't finish his career being remembered as the GOAT because he didn't have 2 hands full of rings. But for me, I've never seen a quarterback play the position better at his peak. And in his first season at home against Oregon State, Aaron Rodgers went 9 of 34 for 52 yards and an interception. Mama always said there'd be days like this. It happened to Tom. It happened to Uncle Peyton. It happened to Uncle Eli. It happened to Aaron Rodgers. I remember looking up a couple of years ago, Kyler Murray in one of his first starts as a starter at A&M. Now, look, all of these happen at varying degrees, right? Sometimes you're a freshman, sophomore, third-year sophomore, whatever the case may be. Sometimes, though, it just comes down to how much experience do you have. Arch rushed his throws. Arch's mechanics were sloppy. Arch's timing for most of the game was off. That's what happens when you haven't done that before. He's never played in that game before. He's never had been tasked with that before. Now he has. He'll be better for having played it. He will be better this season. Nobody should panic off of Arch's performance, other than to say, if he played Georgia next week, Texas would be in trouble. If he played Ohio State next week, Texas would be in trouble. Hell, if they were in Gainesville next week, maybe Texas would be in trouble. But that's a month from now. That's 3 more data points entered into his getting comfortable, his development taking off. You know, the thing about Uncle Peyton, he did get his ass handed to him by Alabama at home in that first year as a starter. And then Tennessee won 8 of its last 9 games and was not a team that anybody in the country wanted to mess with and would have been incredibly dangerous in a playoff. Relax. To quote a quarterback that I just mentioned, who once upon a time had a bad game early in the season, everybody kind of freaked out. Relax. Arch will be all right. Beyond that, like, I still think that you're still talking about a situation where this team has just got a lot that still needs to be done. Running backs, running game, receivers got to get open. Offensive linemen need to not have pre-snap penalties and some of the little things. They got to win the battle up front against a good defensive line. Like, there's so much room for improvement, and I have no doubt that they will get there. The doubts, if any, exist in this mind the day after is simply what happens later in the season when this matchup occurs again. And by this matchup, I mean either Ohio State or Georgia, this kind of matchup. At this point, we don't have the evidence to suggest that it will. And since it is the thing that will define the way this entire season is remembered, seems notable. But there's a lot of football to be played. I don't know that we'll have that evidence by the time the next time one of these games rolls around, but maybe we'll have enough evidence to suggest that it could happen. But that's what was lost yesterday. A chance for Texas to say, we are over the Ohio State-Georgia thing. Here's a stat. Did you know that in the 20 games before Texas played Georgia last year in Austin, Texas had an 18-2 record. 18-2 record in the 20 games prior to the game in Athens, or the game in Austin last year. Starting with that game in Austin against Georgia, Texas is 7-4. Crazy to think about, right? I mean, national semifinalist, all that stuff. Texas is 7-4 in its last 11 games. And all 4 of those losses are to Georgia and Ohio State. So you're going to have to forgive me if I've got a little bit of an Ohio State-Georgia obsession at this point. That's the bar, and Texas didn't clear it, and yesterday was a chance to do so, and then emerge from that with a ton of confidence that allows you to really approach the rest of the season from a different vantage point. All right, now let me look at a few of these plethora of pinatas. Did I click on that right? Hold on. Grade Sark's performance yesterday. Grade Sark's performance yesterday, I would say it was an F. I mean, as an offensive coach, that's his offense. So the offense got an F. Arch got an F. By extension, Sark got an F. I didn't think really much of anything they did on offense warranted an attaboy. So, yeah, the red zone thing is the red zone thing. They were 0-2 yesterday. They lost by 7 points. It matters. It matters. Not getting in from the 1 yard line mattered. And they really didn't have a plan once they got there. That was hope. And hope's not a plan. Believe me, I have hope all the time. Nate says 17 of 30 for 170, touchdown and interception, 38 yards rushing. If that's his stinker against the top defense, it's going to be okay. No, it wasn't. They scored 7 points. What are we doing? Nate, he threw for 13 yards in the first quarter, 13 yards in the second quarter, 12 yards in the third quarter. And then when they were down 14-0, he got some misleading yardage when Ohio State was kind of in prevent. Like, come on. Now, look, if that's a stinker against a top defense, it's not okay. If it's a stinker against a bad team, it'll be okay. But that can't happen against Georgia and be okay. That was not good. It's a 108 quarterback rating. What are we doing? What are we talking about? Come on, Nate. Come on. Money B says most teams see improvement from week 1 to week 2. It is a cliche. Usually there is enough truth in cliches that there's a reason why we say them. I bet Texas. Oh, man. San Jose, I think. Hold on. I looked this up yesterday. Let me look this up. Hold on. Yeah, no. San Jose State lost on Friday night 16-14 to Central Michigan at home. So, yeah, man, Texas is going to beat their brains in, and they will see a lot of improvement. And that's okay. Nobody needs to completely undermine it's not Georgia's. When I tell you that I'm hyper-focused on Ohio State and Georgia, I don't mean that I'll do that all season. It's like, it ain't going to be good. The conversation isn't to always nitpick. It's just to point out there's a journey that this team is on. Because they could have won yesterday, but then lose in January to Ohio State, and it's not going to matter. It'll be remembered as fool's gold. Because then it'll be you can't win in January. So, you're going to win one of these games. You'd rather it be in January, point blank. All of this is a process. And I think moving forward in weeks to go, the question inevitably of next week. There's nothing that we can see next week that's going to make us go, well, they're ready to play Georgia. They're ready to play Ohio State and Columbus again. They're ready to play Ohio State on a neutral field. No, this team needs some work. This team needs some work. If and when Arch throws 4 touchdown passes next week and they win 70-3, doesn't mean they're ready to play Ohio State. However, when that game is over with, what we should be asking is, did they make progress? Does this help them get to eventually the place they need to be to beat Georgia or Ohio State in January? Honestly, nothing that happened yesterday counts as a negative in that respect. They needed to put a marker down. Now we know where they are. Now we know where the starting and we know where the starting points are with every position on the field. How it ends will define the season, right? I always say, be better in October than you were in September. Be better in November than you were in October. Be better in December than you were in November. And man, when you're in January, be better than you were in December. And guys, I just got an emergency note. So I am going to cut this one short. I got to go do some family stuff. So look, for myself and just me, because I'm the only one on the show today, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, get notifications. We'll be back tomorrow, but for the rest of the day, I am going to sign off. You guys have a wonderful Sunday. Enjoy your Labor Day. Hope that means you have the day off.